Welcome to Flyp Academy.
Welcome to Lesson 2 of Russia in early 1917. In this unit, the key questions are: what was the impact of the First World War on Russia? What were the political, social, and economic effects of the war? What impact did Nicholas's decision to act as Commander-in-Chief have on Russia in the First World War? These are the key terms. Read through them carefully. Commander-in-Chief, Tsarism, mobilization, retreat, provinces, Duma, requisitioning, artillery, prohibition. Task: pause the video and make your own keyword glossary. Add any key term definitions to the keyword glossary for each topic as you go along. Make sure you know what all the keywords mean. They are very important. Challenge: use the keywords in a sentence. Last lesson, we saw that the people of Russia were desperately unhappy at their living conditions. The impact of World War I had left them starving, in grief, and without a stable government. In response, parts of Russia had erupted into unrest, with protests and riots taking place across the country, and the army mutinying against their commanders. The First World War had greater implications than just impacting upon the Russian people. Today, we'll investigate the events of the First World War and the impacts of it on Russia politically, economically, and socially. Flash task: 2 minutes. Pause the video and quickly bullet point 5 reasons why the people of Russia were already discontented with the Tsar in 1917. Some of the factors you may have listed: lack of basic food and provisions, army retreating, scorched earth policy making the land uninhabitable, peasants hoarding food, army firing upon its own people. Strikes by the workers led to further disruption amongst the cities. Mutinies in the army showed lack of strength and leadership. The successes and later defeats of the military also contributed to the growing discontent and problems within Russia during 1917. At first, the war gave Tsarism a boost. With Russia under threat, the people felt very patriotic. Russia had the largest army in the world in 1914, and rapid mobilization meant Russia was able to make advances into enemy territory quickly. However, Russia's early successes soon turned into terrible defeats. Germany was able to use its efficient railway system, something Russia was still trying to develop at the start of the 20th century, to move troops quickly to the best possible places to attack the Russians. After the first month of fighting, at the end of August 1914, the Germans won a stunning victory at Tannenberg. The Russians lost 122,000 men and vast quantities of supplies and weapons. Around 30,000 men were killed, the rest were captured. The Russian commander was so ashamed of the scale of defeat that he took his own life. More defeats quickly followed. 2 battles at the Masurian Lakes in September 1914 and February 1915 resulted in more heavy losses. By the end of 1915, Russia had lost 2 million men and was in retreat, with its enemies occupying 3 provinces of the Russian Empire. The military defeats led to growing discontent. This was not simply at the loss of Russian men or the loss of land by German forces. People outspokenly blamed the government due to the lack of weapons and supplies for the army. A third of the army had no rifles. Men were ordered to charge at the enemy unarmed, whilst their attackers sat loaded with machine guns. Orders were sent to pick up weapons from dead soldiers that they went past. The army was also short of artillery shells and other forms of ammunition. Soldiers did not have warm uniform or boots for the winter, and they did not have enough to eat. This led to Russian citizens away from the front lines of battle forming voluntary organizations to try and procure supplies to be sent to the soldiers, as the government could not manage it. Task: you are a Russian soldier fighting on the front lines in 1915. Write a diary entry detailing your experiences in the Russian army during the First World War. Think about how you felt once the army was mobilized, your early successes, and your experiences of battle into 1915-1916. If you were commander, how would you change the war towards a Russian success? When the Russian people learnt of not only the Russian defeats in the First World War, but also of the conditions their men were facing, this further enhanced the hatred towards the government and the growing discontent. Task: refer back to your mind map from the last lesson, which detailed reasons for discontent in Russia and threats towards the Tsarist regime. What have you learnt so far? Add this information to your mind map. To help resolve the situation that Russia found itself in during 1917, the Tsar decided that it was his duty to take command of the Russian army and navy despite having no military experience. During the Russo-Japanese War in 1905, the Tsar had not served in the army or the navy. Nicholas was convinced, against the better judgment of his ministers in the Duma, that it was his sacred duty to take responsibility for the defence of his country. Sire, we make bold once more to tell you that, to the best of our understanding, your adoption of such a decision threatens Russia, yourself and your dynasty with serious consequences. From an appeal by Nicholas's ministers asking him to rethink his decision to become Commander-in-Chief. In this course, and as a historian, it is important that you make inferences. You practiced this skill last lesson. It's an important skill for your real exam. Task: look at the source carefully. You need to make 2 inferences about the Duma's response to Nicholas becoming Commander-in-Chief in 1917. Each inference must be supported by a quote or a part of the source that you can see. Use the sentence starters below to help you. Some of the things you could have inferred are: the ministers are worried about the threat of the survival of the Romanov dynasty. They believe that Nicholas becoming Commander-in-Chief will have serious consequences. The ministers are worried about the threat to the Tsar's life. That they had expressed their concerns to Nicholas more than once. The military defeats and the decision to become Commander-in-Chief had huge effects for Russia, politically, socially and economically. Task: pause the video and sort the effects below into their correct heading. Remember that some effects may be found in 2 or all 3 of the factors listed. On paper 3, you will have to answer a 12-mark question. This is a very simple question to achieve full marks on, as long as you follow a clear peel structure. It will always give you 2 points to write about, but you must include information of your own that is not given in the question. If you do not do this, you cannot get more than 6 out of 12. Let's take a look at an example together. Explain why there was growing discontent with the Tsar in 1917. Military defeats, peasant discontent. Task: a model paragraph is shown below. Read through it and identify the point, the evidence, the explanation and the link. Read through the explanation again and develop this to ensure that it strongly answers the question. An examiner would argue that this is too weak. Task. Check your identification below. Task. Following this structure, write the other 2 paragraphs to answer this question. Highlight your peel as you go to make sure you are hitting each step. Remember, evidence should be facts, figures, not opinion.